Hello, you multi-mission motivated maritimers. I think I'm supposed to say maritimers. And thank you to Andy McPherson for introducing Ralphie Review 936 with his malt mention. Thank you, Andy. Welcome, pals and malt mates, to the Bothy for another Ralphie Review. And I haven't done a blended whisky, traditional blended whisky, for quite a long time, for a simple reason. I tend to buy single malts because that's what I enjoy the most, and that is generally what I find to be best value for money. Now, there's quite a lot of blended Scotch whiskies out there, but I find them fairly generic, simple, and frankly not as complex and interesting as I used to find them. However, I do keep my eyes open on the blend, Scotch whisky blend scene for anything that's particularly new, interesting or quality, particularly if it represents reasonable value for money. And I have an example here from the Antiquary range. Antiquary is a really old brand of traditional Scotch whisky. And by Scotch whisky, I'm talking about a combination of single malt and column still grain whisky made from a mixed mash bill. So we're talking Chivas Regal, Johnnie Walker territory, White Horse, black and white, that sort of thing. I tend to avoid these whiskies now because over recent years, and I'm talking about the last 5 years, I've really noticed them go downhill, losing character and losing a sense of quality casks being used. And I can understand that if there's allegedly an increased demand for blended whisky and people don't sip it, they mix it or they have it as cocktails. So there's really no point in bottling quality when in fact you're selling an established brand, a recognisable brand, because that's what people are buying. However, there are two brands of fairly traditional Scotch whisky, blended Scotch whisky, that I do notice are maintaining a sort of quality. One is Antiquary and the other is Hankey Bannister. So they're two less well-known brands, but they seem to still be using decent casks in the blending, unlike Teacher's, Black Bottle, and many other brands which have changed enormously in recent years. And the thing is that when you're into malt whisky, single malt whisky, you'll go back and taste a blend that you used to quite enjoy. But the fact is your palate's moved on from the experience of connecting with a variety of single malt whiskies, which are inevitably a superior spirit. And, oh, hello little pussycat. Give me I'll lift you up and then you'll want down again immediately. There you go. You have a wee sit in the barrel there. This is Fluffy. Say hello to the malt mates, Fluffy. Give him a wave. Alright. Is that the whiskey bottle lid? Is that what you really want? Is that what you want? Hey, go. Oh, what's that? I've got two cats, Fluffy and Billy. They're mongrel cats. I got them for free because basically the family were looking for a home that would look after them. And they've settled in wonderfully well. As you get with mongrel cats, there's no health issues, there's no particular tears, tempers and tantrums, and you don't get all the issues that you can get with pedigree cats. So there you go. And also, to be honest, in recent years there's been a lot of mice around the Bothy, and they have been nibbling some of my casks, and fortunately they don't nibble glass or I'd be in serious trouble. But they have been coming into the house further up the road. And the result is that last year I caught 4 mice in my kitchen. And I released them way down near the sea, near the coast. Because I'm quite humanitarian about these things. But the thing is with mice is, first year it's 1 mice, second year it's 4, third year it's 16, fourth year it's 100. That's what you get with mice. So these little fellas, these little furry demons, are going to sort that problem out for me. Hey ho, there we go. Back to the whiskey. This has been on the market for about a year or so now, this version of Antiquary. It's a 15-year-old and it's specifically matured in Bordeaux red wine casks. So you get that extra fruit note dimension in what is already a fairly decent blended whiskey at usually quite a decent age, because at 15 years old the mixed mash bill portion of a blended whiskey will be kind of really settling down at that point and not too custardy. Some really decent maturation, slightly sherry, barley sugar note in the nose. It's pretty decent actually. Quite impressive for a modern blend. Yeah, basically I'm saying most modern blends don't impress me at all now. They're either very patchy or they're brand led and clearly showing inferior cask maturation consistently. But here, pretty decent. A slight nutmeg note, some slight strawberry, cherry, slightly vague, but it's in there and it gives an interesting dimension. Taste. Slightly jaggy. Quite malty. Not a lot of complexity really, but the red fruit note just gives it that extra lift. It makes it from just a generic jobbing blended whiskey into something just a little bit more interesting because of the Bordeaux red wine cask finish. Excuse me a second. It says matured and didn't say finish, so I'll take that back. Matured, has been matured in ex-Bordeaux red wine casks. A drop of water. That should sit. I won't be adding much. This is bottled at 43%. It certainly helps it's 15 years old and it's got an age statement. You know, it's giving you something to go on, but as with all my Antiquary reviews, by the way, a word of caution, the base is very narrow because of the designer glass-shaped bottle, and it makes it very precarious if you happen to have the bottle too near to where you're sitting drinking. It isn't a stable bottle. It tips over very easily, and I would imagine there has been a few broken over the years due to accidents in bars. I've added a drop of water, only about 2 or 3 millilitres. It is chill filtered. There is caramel colour in caramel colouring in this, but I don't make a fuss when it's a blend about the burnt sugar for colouring, because it is a blend, and it's not. Blends don't tend to be impacted the same way that the single malts are by having the burnt sugar added for colourant. Nice little cocoa, slightly chocolatey notes. A much more measured arrival. I'm sensing tomatin single malt primarily. Generally fruity, Highland single malt. See, it's got kind of that barley sugar at the front, but kind of crispy and slightly tannic and slightly gingery. A little bit of spice, dry spice towards the finish. The finish lingers on just a little bit longer than you might expect for a blend these days. So all in all, pretty competent. So what am I going to give this as a blended mark? I'm not hanging around here as you can see, malt mates, because I come back to blends occasionally, but I'm a single malt reviewer, not a blend reviewer. I used to have more blends in the old days when they were better quality. But for all the difference in price these days, there's so little difference in cost between a competent blend and a really good single malt. I mean, which are you going to choose? If you're in the UK buying off the shelf, are you going to choose Antiquary 15-year-old Bordeaux wine cask matured blended whiskey, or are you going to go for a bottle of Deanston 12-year-old? Yeah, frankly, it's a no-brainer. You will find, I guarantee it, you will find that as time goes on, you get bored with blends. They're not particularly exciting. And this old chestnut, this old bullshit that the industry comes out with, that, you know, malts wouldn't be nothing without blends to back them up and all the rest of it. It's not true. It's the reverse that's true. Blends wouldn't exist without malts, because it's the malts that actually give blends some identity and character, because the majority of column still, continuous still, mixed mash bill whiskies, frankly, are really quite boring. Whether it be Cameron Brigg, probably one of the most boring of the lot, or North British, which is pretty boring. I mean, the only grain distillery, continuous still distillery in Scotland that ever excited me was Carsbridge, and it's shut now. It's gone. It was the only one that had any real character. But it's the modern thing is to make out that, you know, because of the enthusiasm and the passion of the whisky faithful, is to actually make things out to be better than they actually are, particularly in relation to the price. So what am I going to give this? $83 out of 100. There we go. And that, my maltsters, is a blended whisky mark. There we go. I'll go and find the lid now that my little cat has batted it into the corner somewhere. But before I conclude, apart from the 15-year-old, the next competent antiquary is the 12-year-old, which is bottled at 40%. This is bottled at 43%. But it's the 12-year-old is a competent blend if you want to have a blend in your collection. There's also, I have seen an 18-year-old out there somewhere, along with a 35-year-old. Now, the 35-year-old is bottled at 46%, and it's very good. But what you're most likely to see as an older version of Antiquary is the 21-year-old at 43%. But I'm telling you right now, it's a complete non-event. Don't waste your money on it. This brand is part of Tomatin Distillery, which is owned by a Japanese company called Takara Shuzo Company Limited. So Tomatin is Japanese owned, providing malts primarily for blending purposes, and it shows because it's a very generalised malt, the Tomatin signature. You do get some competent versions of Tomatin, and you get others which are absolute non-events, so be very careful which one you're choosing if you buy some Tomatin, because the malt signature of this distillery is very chameleon. It tends to react and get very overwhelmed by the cask influence very, very quickly. It's very much blend filler as Tomatin. That's just the way it is. It's just what the signature's designed for. It doesn't really stand out as a single malt. There are single malts out there. Some of them are really quite competent, but it's all down to the quality of the casks. It's not really to do with the signature of Tomatin, which is really quite vanilla. It's got a real vanilla signature. Simple as that. I'm Ralphie. Thank you for watching. If you pop back again for Ralphie Review 936 Extras, I'm going to be talking about the idea of paying £16 million, £15 million for a barrel of Ardbeg. I'm going to be talking about that and giving a perspective and opinion. So you might want to pour yourself a rather stiff dram for sitting down to that one, because I'm not going to miss and hit the wall. It's part of a new generation of absurdism in the whisky scene, and it's really quite dangerous. It's hugely manipulative, and frankly I find it absolutely and utterly contemptuous. But I'll speak to you about that in the extras. It's an extras coming up shortly. Be sure not to miss it if you enjoyed this and all the rest of that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because plenty of people watch my channel and don't subscribe. But if you subscribe, hopefully, unless I'm still shadow banned, you're going to get the updates when new videos come out. See you soon, malt mates.